do you think are the most ELO inflated champions? Or in other words, champions that can carry you to a higher rank than you actually deserve? This is a question that has been circulating the League community for quite some time. To get to the bottom of this once and for all, we sent out a Google form to you guys asking you to pick one ELO inflated champion for each role, and over 1,400 people chimed in on the debate. That's right, this video is all about what you guys think, eliminating as much bias as possible and getting a general outlook on who the player base thinks are the most ELO inflated champions. With this data, we'll be sharing with you the top 5 most ELO inflated champions for each role, along with how many votes each champ in the top 5 received. So instead of roasting us here at SkillCapped, if you're unhappy with this list, take it out on each other in the comments, because this one is all thanks to you guys. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. Starting off with the top lane, coming in at the number 5 spot with 64 votes is Aatrox. Aatrox being a pretty strong champion in meta right now is likely the reason to why so many people voted for him. Aatrox is also a champ that can feel extremely frustrating to play against when he gets a lead with all his healing and skirmish power, so a lot of people may have voted for him for that reason too. We can see how hitting that one massive AoE Q that just heals Aatrox from 25% health nearly to full can lead you to thinking the champ is a bit ELO inflated. Next up, taking home the number 4 spot for top lane with 74 votes is Darius. With Darius, it's gotta be the incredible skirmish power that gets him most of his votes here. Being able to completely dumpster outnumbered scenarios due to the reset on Darius' ultimate is a big factor in play. To be fair, running around with Ghost popped and pressing R on low health targets does not require a crazy amount of skill, so we can see where you guys are coming from with this selection. Of course, there's more to it than that a lot of the time, but the pure ability for Darius to completely take over fights on his own can lead to him feeling ELO inflated. Number 3 for top lane, gathering over 100 votes with 113 to be exact, is Illaoi. It's pretty easy to see why people would think Illaoi is ELO inflated. The 1v2 potential and even 1v3 potential when ahead is better than the majority of top lane picks. It really just comes down to how oppressive Illaoi feels to play against when ahead, which is definitely valid. The runner-up for top lane with 201 votes is Malphite. This one makes a ton of sense because Mal is a champion who can get away with a lot of mistakes and still be a very useful character. You definitely don't need as much knowledge up in the top lane to succeed with Malphite, as simply getting tanky and pressing R on the high priority target is a simple but extremely effective win condition in a lot of games. Beating out Malphite by just 4 votes with a total of 205, and the most ELO inflated top laner according to you guys is Garen. You could definitely argue for Malphite and Garen to be interchanged on this list, as 4 votes is such a small margin. Nevertheless, Garen got a ton of votes, and it really just comes down to the champ being a stat checker with very little counterplay when he gets a lead. You could lack a lot of game sense on Garen, but as long as you can single out the Fed carry and burst them down with your full combo, it's often all you have to do to be effective. Playing against a Garen who gets a lead feels helpless, especially if you're a melee assassin or fighter, as there's just no way to outplay him in the 1v1. Jungle was one role that had a very definitive top 5, as the gap in votes between the number 5 champion and the number 6 champion was over 50. At the number 5 spot is Evelynn, who garnered 117 votes, while Amumu was the champ at number 6 with just 56 votes. Evelynn makes a lot of sense in the top 5 because of the stealth mechanic and ability for her to thrive in the chaotic nature of solo queue. The constant stealth just gives the champion such an edge up when it comes down to finding pick plays, and a lot of the time all you have to do is be patient, wait for the enemies to split, and there will be free kills waiting for you. 4th on the list for jungle with just a few extra votes than Evelynn at 124 is Hecarim. The early gank power and ability to thrive with the recently buffed Spear of Shojin are the driving factors to why Hecarim gets a lot of votes. Being a jungler that runs Ghost and gets a ton of move speed from the spell along with his E makes early ganking so lethal. Since Ghost is on a much shorter cooldown than Flash, Hecarim will on average have many more guaranteed gank angles than the majority of junglers throughout the early game. This can be especially annoying to play against as a laner, and likely where a lot of his votes came from. At the number 3 spot for jungle is Master Yi with 143 votes. Yi being so high up is likely due to the champion being very face roll when ahead. Playing against a fed Yi if your team lacks hard CC is extremely difficult. You pretty much just have to pray that he overextends and gives up shutdowns, or else he's just going to clean up fights every single time. You can definitely lack macro knowledge on someone like Yi and simply win through superior mechanical prowess, so we see why he got so many votes. The second most ELO inflated jungler according to you guys is Jarvan, taking home 183 votes. This one is really a no-brainer right now due to how powerful the Gore Drinker with Spear of Shojin item combo is. If Jarvan were to be nerfed and fall out of meta, we would likely not see him so high up on this list, so we think that most of his votes are coming from the fact that he's just so powerful in the current meta. At the number 1 spot for jungle, with 10 more votes than Jarvan, sitting at 193, is Kayn. For Kayn to gather as much votes as he did while actually being significantly nerfed over the past 2 patches is quite interesting. A trend with 4 out of the 5 junglers on this list is that they are very strong skirmishing champions. Jarvan, Yi, Hecarim, and Kayn are all extremely powerful on 2 items and have the ability to completely take over fights on their own. There's not a ton of mechanical skill required to play these champions either, at least compared to junglers like Lee Sin, Nidalee, or Elise. Mid lane was one role where there wasn't a massive difference in votes between the 1st place champ and the 5th place champ. Top lane, for example, had Aatrox at number 5 with just 64 votes, while Garen at number 1 had 205. No mid lane champ even came close to reaching 200 votes, which goes to show that people are a lot more split on who they think are ELO inflated for mid. At the number 5 spot for mid lane with 82 votes is Annie. This one is pretty self-explanatory, as Annie is a champ who is extremely basic. You only need a few games on Annie to understand her combos and her damage, which means climbing to a higher rank than you deserve can be very likely if you're only playing Annie. Number 4 on the list for mid lane is Zed, with just a few more votes than Annie at 86. If this were a more biased list that us at SkillCapped were making, we probably would not have Zed in the top 5. Votes were so close for mid though that someone like Aurelion Sol, who had 80 votes, could have easily taken Zed's place. We see Zed in the top 10, but as a champion who does require more mechanical skill than most mids and is easily shut down by stuff like Zanya's and mobility, it's hard for us to agree with him being this high up. If you were someone who voted for Zed or think that he is ELO inflated, definitely let us know your reasoning in the comments. Another mid lane champion we were a bit surprised to see getting so many votes was Ahri, as she takes home the number 3 spot with 100 votes. Ahri is one of the more safe mid lane picks, and she can go even or win lane in a lot of matchups. This less punishable nature of the champion definitely allows you to make a lot more mistakes and get away with them compared to many other champs. Zed and Ahri are consistently 2 of the most common mid lane champions in solo queue as well, so that could definitely have been a factor as to why they got so many votes. If you never play against a champ, then you're probably not going to vote for them as being ELO inflated. The top 2 for mid lane are without question very understandable, as Malzahar is in the 2 slot with 111 votes. The fact that Malz thrives off perma-pushing waves and using his point-and-click suppress to lock down targets says enough about his high standing on the list. Say for example you are a LeBlanc main and then you branch off and try to start playing Ahri. The transition would likely be pretty seamless, not taking you too many games to get the hang of Ahri. On the flip side, if you were to go from one-tricking Malz and then try to pick up LeBlanc, you'd definitely have a very difficult time at first. Malz is such a weak laning champion that trading is not even something you think about a lot of the time, as just using abilities to collect farm is often the correct play. You can win with Malzahar without understanding such a key fundamental like trading that you need to learn for the majority of other champions, which leads to him being more ELO inflated. With 128 votes, the most ELO inflated mid lane champion is Katarina. We can definitely see this placement being more controversial. Kat mains will argue that the champion is more difficult because you have to choose your openings wisely and her early game is quite punishable. On the other hand, and the reason to why we think she got so many votes is due to the fact that you can win with Kat without actually playing League. What we mean by this is that you can just perma roam bot, collect kills, completely disregard farm in mid lane, and still come out on top. Of course, this is not true for all Katarina players, but it can be a reason to why some Kat players may be a higher rank than they deserve. Dropping farm all game and perma roaming is not going to work on a lot of mid lane champs, but it works for Kat and is a big factor to why we think she got so many votes. If you guys agree with Kat being ELO inflated, let us know why you think so in the comments below. Unlike mid lane, ADC has a very definitive top 5, with 2 champions receiving over 200 votes. At the number 5 spot with 91 votes is Seraphine. Now, of course, Seraphine is not a traditional ADC, but she is played in the bot lane, so we included her as a champion that you could vote for. Something very interesting as well is that Karthus actually had just 4 fewer votes than Seraphine and sits just below her at the number 6 spot. Karthus and Seraphine are 2 champions we 100% agree with as being ELO inflated in the bot lane. Compared to traditional ADCs, you have a really nice early game on these champs, but also scale exceptionally well. The consistent impact that you can have on Seraphine or Karthus is so much higher than the average ADC, which will in turn inflate your ELO. Fall behind on Vayne or Ezreal and your impact on the game is going to be extremely poor. Fall behind on Seraphine and you still have the utility and game-changing ultimate that can heavily influence fights. With 111 votes in the number 4 spot for ADC is going to be Samira. This one is probably the most controversial in the top 5, as you could equally argue for and against Samira being on the list. On the one side, Samira is quite the unique ADC, being a champion who thrives up in melee range, so it's vital you choose your openings wisely. On the other side though, if you do choose your openings wisely, the champ just plays itself from then on out, as her ultimate can clean up fights and makes her an incredible skirmisher. The ability for Samira to turn outnumbered fights is another factor that likely draws a lot of votes in. Very few ADCs have the same kind of potential that Samira does when it comes down to winning out in 2v3s. Next up on the list with 130 votes and in the number 3 spot for ADC is Ashe. Ashe being this high up is without question entirely meta-based right now. The champion has been an S tier pick or above for many months in a row and is an ELO inflator for that reason. If Ashe were to be nerfed, I don't think there's any reason to why she wouldn't completely fall off this list entirely. We see an absolutely massive difference in votes from the number 3 spot up to number 2, going from 130 with Ashe all the way up to 228 with Misfortune. MS MF has always been one of the best champions to climb with in the lower ranks, so it's no surprise to see her this high up. You can be completely awful at ADC, but if you can one-trick Misfortune and press R at the correct times, you're going to collect your wins. Try swapping from maining Misfortune over to the likes of Vayne, and you'd probably end up going on a massive loss streak. The most played ADC in the entire game right now has been voted as the most ELO inflated ADC, taking home 238 votes is Kai'Sa. Especially with the new lethality build that has popped up as of recent, we can definitely agree with this placement. One-shotting with W and Q while being able to kite away from dive champions with ease is absolutely disgusting coming out of an ADC. If you're playing on hit Kai'Sa, we don't necessarily think she should be in the #1 spot, but poker lethality Kai'Sa is deserving of this spot for sure. Moving on to the support top 5 with 74 votes, in the #5 spot is Blitzcrank. Honestly, Blitz being this high up is a bit of a surprise. This one is quite likely due to the solo Q meta right now, as Blitzcrank is one of the top tier supports. If Blitz were not strong in meta, we definitely don't think he would be this high up, just due to the fact that he's not the easiest champion in the game to pick up right away and just start stomping games with. In the #4 spot for support is a champion we agree with much more, being Nautilus, as he received 81 votes. Not being a champion who can CC an enemy for multiple seconds without taking any skill at all is ELO inflated relative to other supports. Even though Naut is a hook support, when compared to the other hook supports, he's just so much easier, as his hook is not only much wider than those of Thresh or Blitz, but he can set up a guaranteed hook by using his point and click R. Of all melee supports, you can definitely be the least knowledgeable of the role and still find success on someone like Nautilus. So those are the only 2 melee supports on the list, as we have enchanters to round out the top 3. Lulu has gathered 100 votes and sits in the 3rd spot. We think Lulu is this high up mainly due to the sit back, throw abilities on carry, and watch your team do all the work nature of the champion. There are definitely ways to express your skill on Lulu, but especially when playing against her, Polymorph can just feel like such a broken ability. You could definitely make a very good argument for Lulu to be lower down on the list, but relative to other supports, you can be pretty effective on Lulu without needing to learn all the nuances of the champ or role. The runner-up for support with 109 votes is Lux. With Lux, her poke power in lane with E can be quite annoying, and it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to hit consistently. Since the champion builds like a normal mage, the one-shot power off catch plays with Q is really strong. All you gotta do is hit that one bind on a priority target, and it can win your team the game. In a way, Lux is quite similar to Blitz, because you could be completely irrelevant all game long, hit that one Q, and you've suddenly won the game. This is likely why Lux gathered so many votes, as her catch power can be extremely influential for solo queue. The final support rounding out the top 5 brought in the most amount of votes for any champion with 383. No other champ even came close to receiving this many votes, as the second highest was Kai'Sa at 238. So the most ELO inflated champion voted by you guys, not only for support but in the entire game, is Yuumi. Being a champion that you can play while practically AFK, it's no surprise she takes home the #1 spot. Before all the Yuumi mains hit the comment section, let's make one thing clear. Are there ways to express your skill on Yuumi? Of course. Relative to other champions though, can you win with Yuumi without requiring as much general game knowledge? Most definitely. And this is the big reason why she tops the list. The baseline amount of skill required to play Yuumi at a serviceable level is much lower than your average champion, which can therefore lead to ELO inflation. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into ELO Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So there you have it guys, the most ELO inflated champions for every single role. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you back soon.